It's a peculiar thing to consider. In the 21st century, we can decode the genome of a species, map the cosmic microwave background of the universe, and land a probe on a comet moving at 135, 0 kilometers per hour. Yet, despite these monumental achievements, the human species still struggles with tribalism, fear, and the inability to live peacefully with itself. We have advanced in technology, but have we advanced in wisdom? That's not a rhetorical question. It is, in fact, the most important question of our time. Because the fate of every civilization that came before us was not decided by how clever their tools were, but by how wisely they used them. And so here we are, a species capable of shaping planets, yet still uncertain how to shape its own future. Let's ask the only question that matters now. Can human consciousness, the software running this entire planetary experiment, evolve fast enough to match the scale of its own power? Because, make no mistake, the 21st century is not merely an age of technology, it is an age of consequence. When people speak of a new Earth, they often imagine it as a place, a utopia on the other side of catastrophe, or perhaps a mystical realm accessible only to the enlightened. But from a scientific lens, the idea deserves reframing. Earth does not need to be replaced. It is not outdated software awaiting an upgrade. The planet has existed for over 4.5 billion years, sustained life for billions, and weathered 5 mass extinctions, and yet it still spins, resilient and radiant. The change we're actually referring to isn't geological. It's neurological, it's sociological, it's perceptual. The new Earth, then, is not a new location in space. It is a new relationship between human cognition and the world it inhabits. It's what happens when billions of brains, each an electrochemical symphony of neurons, begin to interpret reality with greater clarity, empathy, and awareness. In this sense, the new Earth is not a destination. It is a statistical emergence, the result of enough individuals choosing to think differently, act differently, live differently. This is not fantasy, it is systems science. It is evolution. Let's begin with the first challenge. Not cosmic, but profoundly personal. Can we escape the gravity of our own past? The human brain is an extraordinary organ. Comprising roughly 86 billion neurons, it evolved to detect patterns, remember pain, and avoid threats. In the Pleistocene, this kept us alive. Today, it keeps many of us locked in loops of anxiety, shame, and inherited behavior. Neuroscience shows that emotionally charged memories, especially those linked to trauma or regret, activate the amygdala and limbic system. When you recall a moment of betrayal, your brain doesn't merely remember it. It relives it. Your heart rate increases. Stress hormones rise. Your body, for all it knows, believes the threat is happening now. This is not spiritual metaphor. This is biological recursion. So the question becomes, can we override it? Can consciousness rise above conditioning? In physics, when a particle encounters a field, it either resonates with it or decays. Likewise, when a human being confronts the echoes of past experience, they can either repeat the pattern or disrupt it. Forgiveness in this context is not moral, it is neurological liberation. It is the conscious interruption of a self-reinforcing signal loop. The first test of a new civilization, then, is not whether we can build better machines, but whether we can stop replaying outdated emotional software long enough to think clearly, to act wisely, to be free. Truth is not a philosophical abstraction. It's a measurable force in the universe. In cosmology, the early universe was in a state of perfect symmetry, a kind of uniform, undifferentiated energy. But symmetry, while elegant, is sterile. It was the breaking of symmetry, the moment when balance fractured, that gave rise to matter, structure, and ultimately, life. Likewise, in human development, truth emerges when we break from conformity. When a person steps outside the gravitational pull of social expectation and says, "This is who I am, even if it's inconvenient. This is what I see, even if it costs me comfort." Every scientific revolution in history, from heliocentrism to relativity, was born from this act. Not defiance for its own sake, but devotion to what is real. Galileo didn't just look through a telescope. He chose to see. The second great test facing any evolving intelligence is this. Can we tolerate the discomfort of truth? Not just in data, but in identity, in history, in ourselves. Because reality doesn't bend to belief, and the universe has never been obligated to flatter our preferences. But if we're willing to live aligned with what is, rather than what we wish, we take a crucial step toward maturity as a species. Despite all our technological marvels, humanity still struggles with one of the most basic and biologically encoded principles of survival: connection. The human species is, and has always been, profoundly social. Our ancestors survived not because they were the strongest, but because they cooperated. Mirror neurons in our brains allow us to empathize. Oxytocin reinforces trust and bonding. Our nervous systems synchronize when we share emotional states. Yet, despite these evolutionary advantages, modern society continues to cultivate separation, not just physically through borders, but ideologically through identity, competition, and fear. This is what makes the third great test so crucial. Can we choose connection over separation in an age designed to divide? It is not a question of sentimentality, but of systems. In physics, gravity binds stars into galaxies. In biology, homeostasis maintains coherence in living organisms. In society, empathy and cooperation perform the same stabilizing function. When those forces weaken, systems fragment, organisms die, civilizations fall. The illusion of separateness is not just a philosophical error, it's an existential threat. And science, ironically, is the loudest voice reminding us of our interdependence. Every atom in your body, calcium in your bones, iron in your blood, was forged in the heart of a dying star. Every breath you take exchanges particles with the lungs of strangers across oceans. You are not a singular entity. You are a process, a node, in a planetary scale web of biology, chemistry, and energy. To harm another, then, is not just a moral failure, it is a cognitive misperception of the system you're embedded in. Love, in this context, is not romance. It is systemic awareness. It is choosing to see the world not as a collection of competing units, but as a symphony of interrelated phenomena. And when we fail this test, when we allow tribalism, hatred, or apathy to fracture that awareness, we do not just risk emotional suffering. We risk destabilizing the very field of human cooperation upon which all progress depends. Then let's examine the fourth challenge, perhaps the most elusive, because it is invisible to those living inside it. Every society, no matter how advanced, is built upon a shared set of assumptions about success, value, normality, and reality itself. These assumptions are not written in the sky, they are embedded in language, reinforced through repetition, and absorbed by the brain during its most plastic stages of development. By the age of 7, the neural architecture of a child has already absorbed the bulk of its core beliefs from its environment, not through logic, but through osmosis. From that point forward, unless disrupted, those beliefs form the invisible scaffolding of adult perception. And so, the fourth great test becomes this. Can you recognize the architecture of your own mental programming and begin to revise it? Not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. Not to burn down the past, but to liberate the future. In the natural world, organisms adapt to their environment or perish. In human society, adaptation is not merely physical, it is conceptual. The ideas that govern use about gender, race, status, work, even time here, not fixed truths, but social constructs that can either evolve or calcify. When outdated ideas become rigid, they no longer serve adaptation. They become constraints. And the tragedy is, most people never realize they're living inside them. They mistake cultural software for reality itself. Consider this. What if the metrics by which you measure success, income, productivity, popularity are not signs of growth, but symptoms of a deeper misalignment between your biology and your environment? What if the habits you defend are merely echoes of a system designed to extract your energy rather than expand your awareness? These are not rhetorical questions. They are neurological, economic, and evolutionary in nature. Cultures that fail to examine their assumptions stagnate. Minds that fail to question their beliefs ossify. And civilizations that prioritize conformity over curiosity decline. The fourth test, then, is not about rejecting society. It is about becoming conscious within it so that you may help reshape it, because the most dangerous prison is not one with walls, it's the one you cannot see, because it was built inside your expectations. Regardless of how evolved a mind may be, or how awakened its perceptions become, it will one day find itself in darkness. And this, more than any scientific breakthrough or philosophical insight, is where the human experiment is most rigorously tested. The universe, after all, is not always a benevolent backdrop. Stars explode, species vanish, galaxies collide, and on Earth, suffering still persists. Poverty, war, illness, loss, no equation shields us from grief. No telescope can point us past sorrow. The fifth test, then, is simple in concept but daunting in execution. Can you hold on to your clarity, your empathy, your light when everything around you invites collapse? From a biological perspective, the human nervous system evolved to prioritize threat detection. This is why negativity feels louder, pain feels stickier, and fear spreads faster than reason. The brain is not designed for peace. It is designed for survival. But our challenge as a species is no longer mere survival. It is transcendence of our default programming. Studies show that gratitude changes the structure of the brain. Acts of service release neurotransmitters that reinforce emotional resilience. Even the simple act of looking up at the star scan trigger a cascade of cognitive effects that reduce anxiety and restore perspective. These are not poetic metaphors. They are data-driven insights into how light is not only something we see, but something we generate neurologically, socially, cosmically. To choose optimism in the face of despair is not naivety. It is a neurological rebellion. It is an evolutionary gamble that says the future is worth constructing even when the present feels unbearable. And that construction begins not with tools, but with internal posture. Because entropy is the natural arc of all systems, meaning intention and hope are the only forces that have ever reversed it. This is why the brightest stars are born from the collapse of the darkest clouds, and why human greatness, too, often emerges not in comfort, but in chaos. The fifth test asks one thing: when the systems you trust fail, when the stories you believed unravel, and when the night feels endless, can you still choose to be a source of coherence, of decency, of direction? That choice is not spiritual, it is statistical. When enough individuals make it, the probability field of the future changes. Let us now arrive at the edge not of a prophecy, but of a possibility. A civilization does not evolve because its clocks tick forward, or its machines grow smarter. It evolves because enough of its members decide to live differently. What we've called 5 tests are not spiritual checkpoints or esoteric riddles. They are systemic thresholds, biological, psychological, and sociocultural forces converging in real time. And we, Homo sapiens, a species barely 300 years old on a 4.5 billion-year-old planet, are standing at one of those thresholds right now. We see it in our institutions cracking, our ecosystems destabilizing, our social fabrics fraying under the weight of complexity. These are not omens, they are indicators. They suggest that the models we've inherited of consumption, of competition, of identity are reaching their limits. But evolution, by definition, does not favor the strongest or the smartest. It favors the most adaptive. And the next adaptation required of us is not physical, it is perceptual, cognitive, moral. We are not being asked to grow bigger muscles or sharper claw sway, are being asked to grow greater clarity, compassion, and coherence. The new Earth, then, is not a planet awaiting discovery. It is a statistical emergence, a byproduct of distributed consciousness converging on higher order alignment. It will not arrive when someone opens a gate. It will emerge when enough individuals choose to become self-aware systems, when we stop reacting purely out of habit and begin designing our actions from principle. Not because it is easy, But because entropy is inevitable and order is a choice, the universe is not watching us with judgment, but it is responding to us with consequence. Every decision you make, what to pay attention to, how to speak to a child, how to treat a stranger, ripples outward in fields we can measure. Attention, as it turns out, is not just psychological currency. It is quantum currency. It determines where energy flows, how structures form, and what future becomes probable. And so the question before us is not whether the Earth will change. It always has. It always will. The question is whether we will change with it consciously, intelligently, and in time. Because the cosmos does not bend toward our desires, it bends toward what we build. And if we are to build a future that transcends the limitations of our past, we must begin not with revolution, but with alignment. Not with escape, but with awareness. Not with noise, but with signal. Not someday, but now. Right here. Right where you stand. You, the observer of this moment, are not merely a passive witness to the universe unfolding. You are a participant in its very architecture. Every neuron firing in your brain, every intention you cultivate, every habit you form becomes part of the evolving complexity of this planetary system. You are not separate from Earth. You are a function of it. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are made of it. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen in your lungs each was forged in the heart of dying stars billions of years ago. You are, in the most literal and empirical sense, a way for the universe to look back on itself and ask, what now? So ask yourself, not out of fear, but out of possibility. What kind of signal do you want to emit into this field of becoming? Because consciousness is not a luxury of the mind. It is the steering mechanism of civilization. Our species will not shift course because a prophet arrives or a savior descends. It will shift because enough people like you choose to live from principle, not preference, from clarity, not confusion, from contribution, not consumption. And while that might sound small, remember this. All great forces in nature begin as patterns in the invisible. Electromagnetism, gravity, photosynthesis, thought. You are, right now, constructing a future you may never see, but others will. And they will live inside the consequences of your choices, just as you are living inside the consequences of those who came before. This is what it means to be alive at the turning point of an age. Not to be special, but to be accountable. Not to be chosen, but to be conscious. The Earth will continue to orbit the sun. The stars will continue to fuse hydrogen. The laws of physics will remain indifferent to our comfort. But human life, that fragile, astonishing experiment, depends not on indifference, but on insight, on whether we can rise not above nature, but into alignment with it, into coherence with each other, into harmony with the intelligence that pulses through the very fabric of reality. So do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the world to change. Become the change, not through slogans, but through structure. Not through urgency, but through discipline. Let your life become a tuning fork for integrity, a field generator of what is possible. And remember, the new Earth is not a myth or a destination. It is a statistical probability that rises or falls with every decision you make. That is the great test. That is the final frontier. And that is entirely up to us.